What's going on, my friends? I want to talk about a little something here real quick. I think a lot of people have talked about, and it's a real quick tip on something. I know a lot of people have questions or start asking, what format do I write in? Library format, release format. Maybe people understand that what you need to do when you're writing cues and stuff. And there's just a little small thing a lot of people don't pay attention to, and I see the pattern of it in a lot of my placements. And I'm going to play these examples of these placements. And what I'm seeing is that if most of you haven't already known, you know that editors don't have a lot of time to listen to your music. They're going through, and if the first few seconds, if you don't get their attention, they're going to move forward and pass up on your track. And if they pass up on it, sometimes it just didn't fit the opportunity that they're trying to do, and that's okay. That doesn't mean it's a bad track. I've said this before. It is just something that didn't fit at that moment in time. A lot of what we're doing is a lot of needle drop stuff, unless you're doing a specific project. It's a custom for an ad or a bigger production or something. And a lot of you guys are doing that and know exactly what I'm talking about if you're in that realm. But you have to understand that on a side note, that a lot of people can't seem to understand, well, how do you contact these music supervisors and how can you get them to use your music? Well, I've said before, music supervisors only use trusted sources. They use a lot of libraries and other clients they trust. There's a liability reason on that. So it's good to start with libraries on this, but get your music in the right places. Get them in the right libraries. Get the music that you do to the right library. In other words, find a library that places a lot of the music that you do, and there's a better odds that you're going to get placements that way, especially in these exclusive libraries. You're going to do better with exclusive. But I'm kind of getting off tangent here. But with that said, if you're doing the right music and putting it in the right mailboxes, there's something I'm seeing in every one of my placements that what I just said a minute ago is that if you can't catch an editor's ear within a few seconds, he's not going to proceed and jump through and listen to the rest of the track. In other words, a lot of times they just jump through the track. They're going to take the track and just kind of, for instance, what I was always told, and a lot of you may know this, they may take a track and, let's see if I've got an example of a track here. Let me just bring up the one, because this particular cue is one. This particular track is being used a lot in sports right now, different sports networks, and it's great. But they may take just forget that this is a DAW. Let's just pretend they brought up the MP3 or the Wave, whatever they downloaded, and just started going. They're going to hit it and go. They'll check to see if you got a stinger ending. That ending is important. It's one thing they check for. They'll scan through real quick on that kind of stuff, and they'll do that thing, that sort of thing, to make sure that that's something they're looking for. In other words, to go deeper in this, these editors may look at your waveform. They look at the waveform of your audio, and they can probably tell when they pull it in that might not be what they're looking for because you're not giving them options. So first quick tip is give them options. Give them options. No matter what, give them options. And options is a way in and out of that track to use different parts of that track and different means. The more options you give, the more options you have of getting your music placed. But the one tip I want to point out is everything I've seen has been placed is from the beginning of the track. Very little have I seen where they just took a little section at the middle of the track somewhere out of the blue. Now, that's not to say they haven't, because I'm sure they have. It's top of my head, I can't remember any. But I'm going to play some of these placements here that can pretty much tell you pretty quick everything's from the beginning. And first example I'll give you is this rock track I've got. I got a Daytona 500 placement here this year. And this particular track, everything I've heard placed with this track was solely from the beginning of this track. Listen to this track right here, and then I'll play the placement. Okay. Now, as long as I played to the beginning of that track, most of these placements really, in most cases, never even went that far into the track. So here is the verse one. I believe this is the Daytona 500. Let's listen. You can hear it. Hear it in the background.
Enjoy our entire Fox NASCAR crew. Take you for a wild ride. We're glad you're watching the Daytona 500, the 2020 edition, live from Daytona International Speedway.
So you heard right within the verse 8 to 12 bars of the track. So that's that track. And I've had that on numerous sports shows. Sports Place was pretty cool. Now let's go with another placement here. I had a track I composed with somebody that was on Headline News for months. They ended their news program on the weekends with this track, and it was always from the beginning right here.
Forensic Files. Have a great Saturday.
Never used anything else in that track on that particular placement, and it was used every week for numerous weeks. Never. And it was from the beginning because something about the beginning of that track caught their ear. Here's one I just got placed on the Oxygen Network. And this particular cue, when I went back and listened to it, was right from the beginning of it. The very beginning of the track. This particular one was used twice in one episode of a crime documentary. It's a show that's regularly on Oxygen. I've never seen the show, but this is it. So let's see which one. One of them was about a minute and something long, and the other was about 32 seconds. In fact, let's bring this up. Let's see.
Bob says that when he was arrested for Howard's murder, he and Judy agreed that he would take the fall for the crime.
I think Judy convinced him that it was best for the kids to have an adult with them, one of the parents. And he really loved those kids.
I think his goal...
All right, so that was from the very beginning of that track. Let's hit this one, because I think it's going to start from the very beginning, but it's going to go further. They just let it ride on in.
The next morning, as a team of officers continues to examine the crime scene, detectives pay a visit to Howard's father, hoping to learn more about his son's personal life.
He was completely shocked.
Of course, he's visibly upset. He has no idea who could do anything like that.
Mr. Whitkin tells police that after Howard's divorce from his wife, Judy, he had initially embraced the bachelor lifestyle.
And that went on for 30 seconds more, but you can see where the progression, right from the beginning of the track, it caught their ear. There are others. I've got video stuff here, right here. So a lot of this stuff here is from this one track here on CNN, Lisa Ling. This was a while back. This particular track, right from the beginning of the track, is it was an album I did about 10 years ago from Rock Track. And you'll hear it, the guitar in the beginning of it. So you see where I'm talking about there, right from the beginning of that track. My biggest point here, and quick and to the point I wanted to make without dragging this out, was get their attention from the beginning. Get it. And when you get their attention, have something new coming in every 4 to 8 bars. I think on that Rock Track it may have gone just a little bit longer, but there were some drum changes in that if you heard it. Your drum work is important here because they're not just looking for a whole new part. Sometimes they're looking for new drum work at it. If there's vocals, a different part, definitely. But you just want to give them options. In other words, in the middle of the track, when you bring in something new in, have some stops to where you're bringing stuff in and out, some transitions, so to speak. And definitely, no matter what you do, make sure you have a stinger or a button ending, that abrupt ending. That same ending I showed you is the end of that Rock Track. Never fade anything out. But anyway, a lot of this stuff's been talked about, but that one little detail about getting their attention from the beginning is very important, because I think 95% or more of these placements that I've got, every one of them were from right at the beginning of that track. it just seems to be a pattern there with that. It really is. That's not to say they're not going to use anything else in that track. They may chop up that cue and use just the ending. I've had placements where they use the first part of the drum beat and then the ending chord. And I had to listen to that placement about 6 times. I knew what track I was listening for, but I just needed to know exactly what track it was and whether I was hearing the right, scene of that show, and figured out quickly what they did. It was decent placement, really was, for less than 10 seconds of audio. So anyway, wanted to run that tip by real quick, and I hope that helps. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.